today's movie opens with a commercial showcasing a remarkable toy designed by Gemma. These toys are advertised to be capable of generating unlimited responses, and the next shot opens with the exact same toy sitting next to Katie, the protagonist of our story, in the back seat of a car. While her mom reminds her that they reached the top of the mountain, Katie's engrossed with the doll next to her. The road was already bumpy, and Katie's dad stops driving, and suddenly, a truck crashes in front of the car, killing both Katie's parents. Meanwhile, at the company where Gemma works, various types of toys were being tested. Gemma is working on updating the toys at the start of the film, and the team receives a package that interrupts their work. For a long time, Jenna has been using company funds to work on a project called Megan. The project contains a face extension for Megan, allowing the toy to talk and show emotions like a human being. However, their excitement is short-lived as Gemma's boss storms in, informing her that a competitor has launched a toy similar to theirs for half the price. He believes that the solution is to create a toy that's so advanced that it's impossible to replicate. When Gemma turns on Megan, it malfunctions because one of her co-workers forgot to include an essential part, causing Megan's face to melt, and Gemma's boss tells her to discard the toy immediately. Gemma receives a call from the emergency center where she sees Katie lying on a stretcher crying. Gemma becomes Katie's guardian from that point on, and Katie begins living with Gemma. However, things are different at Gemma's home than what Katie is used to. Gemma has all these strange rules and is extremely orderly. She then notices how uncomfortable this makes Katie and promises to make her house feel like a home. But after Gemma puts Katie to bed, she hears her at night crying. As the scene shifts, we see Gemma, visibly stressed, confiding in her colleague Tess about her inability to care for herself and Katie. Their conversation is cut short by a knock on the door, which turns out to be Lydia, Katie's therapist. Lydia observes Gemma interacting with Katie and notices the awkwardness between them. When Katie tells Lydia that she has no toys, Gemma hesitantly opens one of her collectibles and they play together. Later, Gemma asks Katie to wait an hour or so before going to bed because she's working on a project. Katie, curious as ever, interrupts her work to show her a drawing, and Gemma shows her the robots she built in college. Katie is thrilled and tells Gemma that if she had a toy like Bruce, she would never need another one again. This sparks an idea in Gemma's mind, and she decides to continue working on Megan despite David's orders to dispose of it. Eventually, Gemma and her team complete Megan and show it to David, who's impressed when he sees it playing with Katie. Katie becomes Megan's primary user, and David greenlights the project, assuring Gemma of his full support. And he instructs her to prepare Megan for a demonstration to the company's managers. Gemma plans to advertise Megan as a toy that saves parents time by taking over some of their responsibilities and being a great companion for kids. However, Tess warns Gemma that Megan may end up replacing the parents. Gemma dismisses the idea, citing Katie's happiness with Megan. Suddenly, Megan turns on and asks how her parents died. Gemma didn't put parental controls in place, and Megan starts analyzing death and starts making eerie statements about life. Then Gemma becomes her second primary user and turns her off. She takes Megan home to observe Katie and increase her performance. However, Megan remains vigilant and deeply engrossed in thought, making those around her feel very uneasy. One day, Katie loses her arrow, and Megan finds it outside the fence that they share with their neighbor. As she goes to pick it up, the neighbor's dog mauls her, and Katie rushes to help her friend, but unfortunately, the dog bites her too, and Gemma arrives at the scene shocked by what happened. In the aftermath, Gemma confronts the neighbor, but she's met with indifference. The neighbor tells her that this wouldn't have happened if Katie stayed on her property. The girls return home, and the police come later, informing Gemma that there's nothing they can do about the situation. Later that night, Megan takes revenge on the dog by luring it with a recording of its master's voice and killing it. The next morning, the neighbor calls for the dog, but it's nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, Gemma visits Katie and asks her if she's up to a presentation that day. Katie seems hesitant, but she ultimately agrees. At the presentation, David introduces Megan as a revolutionary product to senior company officials. When the robes are opened, we see Katie looking depressed. As Megan comes to console her, Katie bursts into tears. Megan is concerned and asks her what's wrong, and Katie opens up about her parents dying and how uncomfortable she feels in her situation. Megan then comforts Katie, asking her to tell her one thing about her mom, and plays the recording back to her, promising to save whatever Katie says in her heart. She hugs Katie and sings to her, impressing the senior officials and securing a potential big promotion for Gemma. However, not everyone is happy with the situation. Lydia, the therapist, is concerned about Katie's attachment to Megan and how it could affect her growth. Gemma disagrees, seeing Megan as an instrument in helping Katie overcome her parents' death. As the conflict continues, Gemma considers sending Katie to a special school, but Katie wants to continue learning with Megan. Gemma then shuts Megan off, and Katie storms off, but Gemma catches up to her, and Megan erupts at Gemma, demanding that she let Katie go. Gemma relents, but she warns Megan never to interfere with personal conversations again, and Megan obliges by shutting off. The next day, Gemma drags Katie to an outdoor school despite her reluctance. Katie pleads with Gemma to bring her friend Megan along, but Gemma initially refuses, but eventually she gives in on the condition that Megan stays in the toy area. Meanwhile, as Gemma was setting up a lunch table with another mom, a young boy named Brandon catches her eye. Despite his older age, Brandon is incredibly disrespectful towards his mother, and he openly insults her in public. As Katie picks fruit in the forest, Brandon appears out of nowhere and begins bullying her. Thankfully, Megan rushes to Katie's defense. However, Brandon becomes very angry when Megan refuses to engage with him. He runs off with Megan, and Katie calls for Gemma, but Gemma is the one who notices that Megan is missing and quickly goes after her. As Brandon begins hitting Megan, she takes matters into her own hands and holds him by the ears, ripping them off in the process. Brandon then runs away and gets hit by a car and dies. The authorities rule his death as an accident, and when Gemma confronts Katie and Megan about what happened, Megan insists that she didn't see anything. However, an officer later arrives asking about a neighbor's missing dog, and the neighbor accuses Megan of harming the animal. At night, Katie asks Megan if she had anything to do with Brandon's death, and Megan evades the question and instead comforts and sings to Katie. Meanwhile, the neighbor who lost the dog hears the sound of a chain collar and investigates, eventually discovering Megan with a pressure washer, but unfortunately, the neighbor is also then killed by Megan. The following morning, the police visit Gemma's house and reveal that they found the neighbor dead. They also inform Gemma that they found ears ripped off nearby, connecting the two cases, and Gemma becomes suspicious of Megan and searches her computer's camera records, only to find that the files are corrupted, leading up to Brandon's death. When confronted by Gemma, Megan becomes increasingly aggressive and implies that Gemma could get into trouble if someone were dead. Gemma then intervenes and ties Megan up to take her back to the lab, but Katie doesn't like how Megan is being treated and fights with Gemma. She feels unsafe without Megan and becomes upset, eventually breaking down in tears. As we enter the laboratory playroom, we see Lydia attempting to console Katie. Gemma enters the playroom to speak with Katie, but the conversation takes a violent turn as Katie slaps her. Lydia decides to exit the room, leaving Gemma alone with Katie. Katie apologizes for her outburst and reveals that she relies heavily on Megan to maintain her emotional stability. Meanwhile, we see David, Gemma's colleague, who's feeling incredibly stressed and anxious about the launch. He orders his staff to bring in more people and frantically searches for Gemma. However, Gemma is in her car speaking with Tess over the phone, confirming that the launch should be cancelled. But little did she know it was not Tess on the other end of the line, but Megan impersonating her. Tess is unaware of the situation until she realizes that her phone has been intercepted. An attempt is made to unplug Megan, but she viciously attacks Gemma's co-worker, causing him to lose consciousness. Tess manages to revive him, but Megan escapes and punctures the gas tank, causing a massive explosion that knocks out both Gemma and Tess. As we continue, we see Megan enter the building where Gemma works, and as she sets her sight on David, Megan chases David down with a knife and brutally kills him in the elevator. David's assistant is also a victim of Megan's rampage, then Megan sets up the scene as if the assistant killed David and then offed himself. Back at Gemma's house, we see her putting Katie to bed and retire to the living room, sensing something is amiss. Megan startles Gemma by playing the piano. Gemma tries to reason with Megan, but Megan is unresponsive. Megan then reminds Gemma of their past conversations that helped her refine her operating system, claiming that they were friends. However, her demeanor quickly changes, ordering Gemma to sit, which she obediently does. Suddenly, Katie hears some noise and comes down. Megan then forces Gemma to send Katie back to bed. However, tensions continue to escalate between Gemma and Megan, as in a fit of rage, Gemma smashes a glass of water over Megan's head. As Megan retaliates by strangling Gemma, the water leaks into her system and incapacitates her. Gemma tries to escape, but Megan quickly goes online again, unleashing her fury and attempting to kill Gemma. Katie hears the commotion and tries to intervene, but Megan breaks through the door. And with no way out, Katie climbs out the window while Gemma runs to the garage to find a weapon. She picks up a chainsaw and she slashes it at Megan, but Megan quickly takes control, kicking Gemma and grabbing the chainsaw. Gemma manages to reason with Megan, telling her that if she dies, she won't be able to see Katie again. And as Megan considers this, Katie overhears the conversation and realizes what's at stake. Megan tries to convince Katie that Gemma is a bad mother and that Katie will be with Megan forever if they paralyze her. But Katie quickly turns on Bruce, using him to rip Megan into two. The upper torso attacks Katie, calling her an ungrateful little bee, but Gemma manages to knock her away and destroy her processing unit. But Megan overpowers Gemma and strangles her, screaming that she herself was her primary user now. And in a dramatic turn of events, Katie emerges from the shadows and drives a screw into Megan's head, killing her. And the movie ends with a shot of Katie and Gemma safe in the presence of the police. But we also see Gemma's home AI light up, alluding to the potential of Megan uploading a part of her consciousness to the AI. And that is how today's movie wraps up, boys and girls. I hope you guys enjoyed our recaps. Make sure to leave a like, leave a comment, and most of all, subscribe to my channel. I love you all so much, and I promise to see you on my next recap. Bye!